YouTube? Welcome back to the Street Fab channel. Look what we got here today. We finally got this back in the shop so we can make the unfinished video that we started a long time ago. I know we've been doing the work throughout this whole project, but then we kind of stopped and got busy with other stuff. So it's finally back in the shop, and we decided to make a video about it because a lot of people have been asking about it. So here we are. For the new people who are watching this and you don't know, so this is 2012 Honda Genesis with a Hemi 6.4 liter swap from a 2016 model. It's been done probably for over a year now. I've been driving around, so maybe some people already have seen this before. So, and it also has a Challenger dash in it along with the center console that we have converted from the other car. So here we go. We're going to kind of start up front and move our way back. Then we'll probably put it up in the rack and take a look from underneath. Alright, so we're just going to start from the front and work our way back, like I said. And the very first thing, and it's been so long I might have actually forgot a few things, maybe some details, but I'll try to remember everything that we're done. So first thing, the core support needed to be modified a little bit, so we ended up just chopping the original core support out and cutting up this little bracelet, or whatever you want to call it, to hold the OEM condenser and the radiator along with the fans from the Challenger. So basically the OEM one was too small and there was a lot of plastic stuff going on in there, so it didn't really work for this setup. And the whole point of this was kind of try to utilize as many as OEM parts as you could from the donor car. That's why you don't see a lot of my, aftermarket radiator with fans or whatnot on it. So anyway, the bottom, we have another piece that was made along, would end up drilling the holes and putting isolators in it, just like OEM would. And the bottom one is steel. This is the aluminum piece. So it kind of holds everything in, just like OEM. And we also try to keep the distance as far as from the engine to the core support, where all the hoses hook up like the Challenger would. So none of this would actually have to be made or cut or anything. So if you ever needed a part, you can just buy the exact OEM replacement and replace it with whatever you're doing. So core support, the bottom subframe piece, the motor was actually too long to fish into the subframe. There's like a big rectangle where the oil pan would sit, and so we end up chopping that off. We'll show you more from the bottom. We'll mention that once way up in the lift. It's easier to see. But there's another piece of tube that basically bent in the U shape to give it a little more room to fish the engine in. Alright, so the next thing up probably is going to be this power steering pump. So 6.4s, they came with a, as far as I know, I don't know a lot about Challengers, but this is what I know. It came with electronics power steering rack. And so we couldn't really transfer that over to the car just because it's too big and bulky. It just would not work here as far as where the steering shaft comes in from the interior and whatnot. So we did end up buying OEM power steering pump from a 6.2 and just making power steering lines for it. So that's how the power steering is set up on this car. So it does still have OEM Genesis power steering rack, but Challenger's power steering pump. So that's how that works. For AC, the car still has AC. That was another goal that we had to keep in mind. So anything from the firewall and all the way to the compressor side is OEM, and all the lines from the condenser up front that come down and meet. Basically everything just was re-crimped and new fittings were put on to fit the compressor. So AC is still there, the heat's still there. We'll get into that in a little bit. But another unique thing that we did, or I thought that was unique, is running just your brake lines through the drip tray for the windshield wipers. So it kind of hides a lot of the brake lines running along the firewall or up and around the engine like the Challenger does. So I think it's another clean look. ABS unit originally was on this side, on the driver's side, I believe, in the Challenger, so it got rerouted all the way up there, or maybe it was on this side. Those are the things that don't remember with it, so sorry for that. Fuse box is still mounted in an OEM location. This is basically just like a whole car transplant that happened. ECU, we kind of moved it up to the back. Got that thing all blacked out so it doesn't kind of stand out when it's silver. There was a lot of wire tucking that kind of happened because a lot of connectors did not get used. Like I said, for power steering, rack didn't get used, so a lot of stuff did have to get tucked away. So we did do as much stuff as we could to match the OEM, you know, spread, and kind of hide it underneath and whatever, just to make it look as clean as possible in the engine bay. I see there's a few things were added after the car left the shop, so I don't know how I feel about this. We need to change that, put it in the lube con. Overflow reservoir for the radiator is over here now. This was like the highest point of the car, and I think it kind of hides it up in the corner to give the front a little bit more room as far as space goes. Other than that, it's mostly OEM setup, OEM wiring. A lot of stuff for the headlights had to get obviously repinned and redone just to get them to work. That was a big pain, along with the reverse lights and the stop lights. That was a big project because these didn't like each other as far as stopping the computer. The windshield wipers still work. Everything's from like controller from the Challenger's interior, so all that stuff is hooked up. It's got the horns, turn signals, everything basically all works. AC, heat. So custom motor mounts, custom transmission mount and the drive shaft to get it all bolted up as far as what it's sitting on. It does utilize OEM Genesis mounts just to match the subframe. It was easier, but the arms that go up to the block and back down to the mount that's the custom part. Another thing that's still OEM is the headers, which is kind of cool. They do fit. They're a little closer to the engine mount side or to the engine mount, but they do work. And it's just a 3-inch stainless steel all the way back to the bumper. Oh, another important thing that I forgot to mention, the steering shaft is actually, if you try to utilize the OEM starter that comes with this motor, the steering shaft actually does not clearance the starter. So we did have to basically put our own starter together with a smaller motor. I'll show you, and the clearance is still kind of small, but it does not touch steering shaft when the engine even rock it back and forth. But that's basically it in the engine bay. It did come out clean, in my opinion. We did repaint the engine bay and shave some of the holes that need to be in here. So for the most part, it's pretty good, at least in my own opinion. Next thing we're going to talk about is the interior, and then we're going to go up and look at the bottom. Alright guys, well here's the interior. Basically just the dash, center console, wheel, everything that we have removed from the Challenger. Try to make this fit because that was the request, is to get everything in here and get it working. First I'm going to start at the top. We did have to basically take the whole structure and half of the good bit of the Challenger's headliner, mold it into this one and get it rewrapped, just so we have the garage door opener and the lights and all that stuff working. Next thing, the dash, the most important part. So everything behind the dash, like the structure that comes across, that's custom to hold the dash in place. The heater core is still from the Genesis, and all the ducting is just been basically fitted or retrofitted, whatever you want to call it, with those flexible ducts that you can buy it for, like hot rods or whatnot. So you still have working vents. To get the dash fitted in here was kind of crazy. We did have to cut like 6 inches off of it from the front of the windshield back, I guess, to get it all fitted. Didn't come out too bad. Side pillars are still from the Genesis, and then we kind of just cut the trims out of the front side of the Challenger's dash and got them fitted, but we can probably do a little better job there. Car's been driven a lot, got shaken down. Now we can see what the weak spots were in it. Not too many, but there's a few. Some of the panels need to be reinstalled. But anyway, center console went in kind of good. Obviously I had to make the mounting points for all this stuff and get it wired up. It still has the Challenger's, or I guess from the steering wheel to the half shaft that goes to the steering rack. This is Challenger's setup, the whole motor assembly that moves the wheel up and down, and it then meets halfway by the firewall, and it goes into Genesis rack, or those half shaft that goes into the rack. So that's just to get all this working. Otherwise it would not be possible to get everything working on your steering wheel without having that. So everything lights up, the reverse camera works. I'll show you where we mounted that. I thought that was pretty cool. The whole body harness was swapped from the Challenger to get all this to work. There's actually a few lights on the dash. Obviously some of them won't go away, like a check engine light. Just, you know, can give you plenty of examples why that's on. Just because a lot of stuff was not used from the previous car. But the dash, I mean the glove box works. Trimmed up a little bit, but it does work. So everything's functional, or as functional as possible. We did have to drill some holes over here on the dash just to get the vents from the blower to work, to get the defrost to work. I guess that's about it. There was just a lot of panels trimming back and forth to get them to fit around the doors nicely, and just to give it like that completed look. But there was a lot of work that went on into just getting this swapped over and get it wired up. Another thing that was kind of a pain to figure out was to get the windows to work. Challenger system didn't really like the motors from the Genesis, so we end up using Challenger's motors in these doors and end up making custom plates to adapt them, and then that way, you know, you can roll your windows up and down both sides. Driver's side will do the passenger just like it would in the OEM car. It does. We did put all OEM speakers into it from the Challenger, yeah. So the system is still sounding pretty nice in it. Even like the trunk button will work on the dash. I mean, I'm sure if you push it, if you heard that pop just now, so the trunk will pop. So kept it as functional as possible, I guess. So at least we tried. Here's the trunk. This is where actually I end up putting the reverse camera. It's in this little Genesis badge. That kind of, I think, was kind of creative. I'll hide the camera. And for your radio on the Challenger side, it did have to have that fin, so with the transferring it and leaving it that color instead of wrapping it. Just another giveaway. It's got a Challenger system in it. On the rear, still got the original exhaust tips, the 2.0 or the 2-liter that came with it, and the guy had exhaust on it. So we kept the rear end that wides out to both sides, but up to that point is everything's 3-inch. We'll show you here in a minute. It does have a couple of carbon fiber bits and pieces here. It does have a wide body, some aftermarket taillights, aftermarket headlights. So those look pretty nice. So let's put it up in the rack and we'll show you from the bottom. Alright, so now we're at the bottom of the car, and we're kind of just going to start forward again. This is the lower subframe part where we did have to cut out. There was originally a piece going from here to the other side, but the motor, the oil pan wouldn't clear, so we did have to make a little U-shaped bar, and it kind of protects the oil pan too, as you see, since the car is sitting a lot lower than the Challenger. The oil pan's closer to the ground on this one. So we end up making this. Then the steering rack did have to get some, we did have to make some spacers for it. So if you look, you can now see, well, maybe right there, if you guys can see it, there's some spacers for this side and also the other side. Both of them are symmetrical to keep, to lower the rack a little bit, so it has, the oil pan has some clearance, because if you look down in there, the oil, the clearance is very minimal. Is that lightweight better this way? Alright, so that was the whole reason to get that space down, and I think what he also needs is to get different tie rods with it, like bump steers, to get geometry back on spec, but that's not on me. Anyway, and another thing I want to show you is right here. If you come around right and show them the steering shaft that comes from the exterior, basically you can see how much room, there is no room for that thing to come through. It actually did touch a couple times. If you put them, and you know, get rid of the solid, or get rid of the OEM motor mounts and put them maybe on something a little more stiffer, we'll probably keep it. But the starter, we did have to get a motor from a different year, and it's a lot shorter, so to get that clearance, and basically that was the only thing that would work to make that not the scrape. Right here, if you take a look, this is a better way to see it. We did make those nice and beefy motor plates. They go on the OEM Genesis motor mounts. Still the headers are the same, and yeah, nice thick steel. This is the plate for the transmission. Same deal, nice and beefy. Sits right over here. There's no vibration. The exhaust, like I told you, 3-inch all the way back from the header. He did hit something right here. You can see it. Killed an animal. Anyway, it runs all the way back. Drive shaft. Here's the drive shaft from Henderson driveline. One solid piece. OEM one came with a 2-piece drive shaft, but that wouldn't really work for us. So custom shaft. The rear end is still all stock. Besides it's sitting on BC coilovers, and the differential has solid bushings in it. But everything else, all the arms are stock. Maybe in the future it will be changed out to something different to get a little bit more stiffness. But the car ride's pretty good for the most part. It is aligned, it's chucking straight. It sounds pretty good. We just drove it around for a little bit just to feel it. So that was the first time driving it after it was gone. About a year and a half ago. So car's still in one piece, driving good, feeling good. That's basically everything from the bottom. If you guys have any other questions, you can comment down below and let me know what you want to see. It's going to be here for a little bit. We're actually going to do something else to it. So this was version 1. Another thing I want to mention before we put this thing down, we did adopt the wheel speed sensors on this car, so the speedometer does work. You know, like a lot of cars, you do swaps and the speedo doesn't work. It's kind of annoying, but we did end up adapting the two of them together, harnessed to the OEM sensors on the Genesis. I know they're two different functions, or however they read the inputs, but it did work. I didn't know that was going to work actually, but we tried it and ended up fixing the speedometer, so that was pretty cool. Alright, we're going to put this thing down, and I'm going to tell you what's next on this car. Alright guys, so this is basically it. Overall project experience and some information passed down. I think it came out pretty good, nice and clean. I liked it. But this is it. It was fun while it lasted. It's time to pull this thing out of here and retire this motor, only to put this in. We got another one, 6.2 with a supercharger. That'll be the next engine going in there, so stay tuned for this one. About to get it started on it. That's about it, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for the next video of putting the Hellcat red eye motor in it. See what happens.